these magnificent creatures have captivated humans for centuries.
People are universally astounded. Look, there's a whale. You hear that all the time.
And let's see if we can get that tail up out of the water and get a couple of the other side of it.
It's one of those things, it's like art. You know, why do we have to protect it like music?
In part 1 of this series, we discussed how right whales are critically endangered due to the impacts from climate change. But right whales are not the only whales who feed in the Gulf of Maine. In part 2, we learn how fin and humpback whales are faring.
With fin whales, they're actually still listed as an endangered species, and a lot of that is because we really don't have good data on them. We don't have good population sizes, we don't know where they breed, and so reproduction is really hard to actually measure when you don't even know what that baseline is.
To complicate matters, fin whales typically swim in deeper waters, which makes them more difficult to locate and track. However, trouble tracking these gentle giants wasn't always the case.
I mean, I started working here in '92, and we used to see groups of 20, 15 fin whales all surging through the water feeding. It was like a given that you would go out and you would see groups of fin whales. You'd see 5 here and 10 there and 4 here and 20 there, and you never see that anymore, ever. You see maybe 3, maybe 2, maybe 1.
While fin whales are tough to find, humpback whales are stealing the spotlight, for now.
With the humpback, it was actually recently delisted from the Endangered Species Act, so the humpback whale, we think that the population is quite healthy right now. That's right now. We don't know what things are going to be changing. We see distributions changing, but when they run out of areas to be able to be shifting, we might start seeing some more scary things happening with some of their numbers.
We definitely have noticed a decline in the number of whales locally, and that they come later every year. They used to be reliably here in June. I mean, I'm going back 10 years or so, then July. Now it's like mid-August, if that.
Not only are the whales arriving later, but they are also showing up in unexpected places.
So since we're not finding anything in those typical areas of where we have spent for decades now, is that we got to push on. We have to go farther.
Well, thanks to climate change, we have to travel a little bit farther out to look for the whales now. In fact, Bar Harbor Whale Watch Company took us 50 miles offshore of Bar Harbor, and we are now in Canadian waters, and this is where we saw humpback whales.
Humpback whales are one of the most common whales that we will see out here. And one of the things that really help us to identify them is not only a pattern of black and white on the underside of their tail, but they also have scars on them. And much of those scars that they have is coming from entanglements or ship strikes.
Allied whale researchers curated a catalog of whales that has contributors from all over the North Atlantic. Identifying every individual whale spotted helps researchers have a better understanding of each whale's story, including Bayou, who we saw on this cruise.
It's important because we can follow them over the years. We know Bayou, we can follow her since she was a calf in 2006. We can follow her from when she was born to now, so we can see that she's now a 15-year-old whale with a calf.
So the calf is still just behind mom.
We also have when she was a calf and have her original identification pictures, she had a full tail. So what we're finding now, and we discovered in 2008, we don't know exactly what happened and what the incident was, but she's lost part of her tail. And there is a good possibility, although we are not sure, that it could have been a propeller. It could have been an interaction with a boat. Maybe it was even an entanglement. From that entanglement and ship strikes, they're finding that it's about 60% of the humpback whale population has been entangled at some point in its life and has those scars.
Whales, when they get entangled, just instinctively they roll as a way of trying to get it off, and that makes it worse. So then they get it caught in their mouth, they get it caught around their flippers, so then they get bound, and then they can't eat. They do suffer. You know, they can't eat. One time I saw a whale that, you know, was trying to spy up, which is when they come up with their head and the line was dragging down its mouth and there was blood. It was just horrible.
One of the reasons entanglements are happening more often is because both whales and humans are now visiting uncharted colder waters in search of food.
I do believe that what I have experienced is that the entanglements are becoming more prominent because lobster and other fishing is getting into deeper waters and colder waters because they're trying to find the cold waters in a warming Gulf of Maine.
And the hard part with humpbacks and fin whales is the things that they eat, the fish that they eat, are the same thing that fishermen want to fish.
These whales prefer fish like herring and an even smaller type of fish, which is high in calories.
The humpbacks and fins are really more targeting small schooling fish and things like krill. We have this little jar of krill right here, which is basically a bigger crustacean than copepod, still considered plankton like that, but it's going to be a little bit of a bigger target.
While humans rely on our teeth to chew our food, fin and humpback whales rely on what's called baleen in their mouths to filter what they eat.
Them opening their mouths really big, this facing the outside, and then when they close their mouth and take in that big water, the fish can't actually make it through and they get stuck in these little hairy fringes and they can lick it with their tongue and swallow all of their prey and all the fish whole.
However, due to the rising temperatures in the Gulf of Maine, schools of these fish are also shifting. To learn exactly what the whales are eating now, Allied Whale, under a federal research permit, collects blubber samples using a crossbow with specialized arrow tips.
That barb is specialized so that it won't go into the whale, but it stops and just takes a tiny bit of skin and blubber. Because there's a float on the arrow, it'll then float on the water, and once the whale is dove, we can safely come up and collect that arrow, unscrew the tip, take the sample, and then send it off for chemical analysis.
Some of the findings are concerning, and humans are to blame.
The little phytoplankton and zooplankton, they actually eat microscopic particles of plastic, and then the fish eat them, and the whales eat that. And then we eat the fish. So we have plastic inside of us, the whales have plastic inside of them.
If humans continue to pollute our oceans, whales and the entire marine habitat will suffer. Although whales are at the top of the food chain, they drive ocean productivity.
The food they eat is then works through the system and then goes back into the water and fertilizes.
Nutrients in their waste, combined with light at the surface, leads to photosynthesis that occurs in the first 100 feet of the ocean, which feeds the bottom of the food chain. So even when whales pass on, they still provide nourishment.
Whale falls, when they unfortunately die, they'll fall down to the bottom of the ocean, and then they feed the entire bottom of the ocean in that sector. All sorts of animals will come and feed on that whale, and they rely on their bodies to sustain them. And so they're feeding the base of the food chain, which then feeds its way back up.
The circle of life represents the infinite nature of energy. What will happen to our marine ecosystem if humans do not alter our behavior? What would an ocean look like without whales? There are actions we can take now to help protect these magnificent creatures.
Use less plastic, less single source packaging and reusable straws. Any of these things, while they seem small and inconsequential, they're much more important to changing culture.
What we can do to help them is try and clean up the ocean, try and get rid of the fishing gear, and try and tag people's lines so that if a whale's caught, you can say, this is your line and you weren't careful and here's your fine. Most important things we can do is reduce speed of vessels. There's studies that show if you're traveling at 10 knots as opposed to 15, as opposed to 20, mortality goes down significantly.
Having knowledge about whales and about their habitat and about what they're doing, going out on a whale watch and feeling connected, that's a huge first step, I think, to becoming passionate and caring about something.